Hello, this is Mike from Dimensional Walking, and today I'm going to title my video Africa, Their UFO and UFO Sightings, Stories to be Told That Have Not Been Heard. Okay? So I had a friend that I worked with when I did the Olympics in 1996 in Atlanta. He was from Nigeria. So we were talking about UFOs and stuff like I do with people that I actually work with or work for. And so, anyways, I wanted to get his perspective on it. And of course, his feelings were, you don't always hear the stories from Africa, but there's plenty of them. But anyways, he told a couple of stories. He kind of wrote a lot of it down, so I kind of try to read it to kind of keep with the same tone and flavor that he told it to me. So, anyways, let me get started here. So, it has been heard over the years that the visit of some creatures that look like humans from outer space to Earth. Also, many have sworn to have caught glimpses of these creatures. They have visited some parts of Nigeria. So there was a 14-year-old boy that was living in one of the villages that he was aware of in northern Nigeria. And this boy was one late evening. Apparently, he used to go to the river and he used to set out traps to catch fish. And so one day or one evening he went out there and the sun was setting and he was going to check his trap. And on reaching the small river, he suddenly noticed that the sun was setting, but he also noticed that it seemed like the sun was setting and getting closer to the location where he was going into the water, which felt strange to him because the sun shouldn't be coming towards you. It may be going down, but not coming towards you. Uh, so within seconds, it dawned on him that what he initially perceived to be the sun was rapidly coming almost parallel to him. The object was glowing and circular, with smoothly glided like a large incandescent saucer. So this young boy expectedly panicked and began to run out of the river. And and the hovering object slowly came after him. Okay, so he ran out of the banks, he ran out of the river, and to the edge of a small mountain, which at that point he was quite breathlessly turned his back and looked to see the strange object. It had apparently stopped, and the large saucer was at the edge of the river, and it was very calm. It didn't seem to move. It was steady, he said, and as if people were inside that were watching him. He had that feeling. I don't think he saw them, okay, but I think he had the feeling that they were there and they were watching him. So, the story told by this young man is characteristic, and this is my friend talking, characteristic with the UFO flying objects uh, that are, obviously popular in the Western world, as he would call it. In fact, polls have shown, of course, he quoted this. He said at that time, and this was we would have probably had our conversation in 1997, about a year into the Olympics, or a year after the Olympics, actually. And he said that one out of four Americans, he said that were believed in UFOs, and on a regular basis, an estimated that 4 million. He was kind of a little researcher too. That's why I had these numbers. And I think these numbers are higher personally. And that 4 million people had claimed to see a UFO, and some were having encounters with UFOs. So, obviously, he said the question always is about Africa, and that uh, there has always been this question about UFOs in Africa. And so he said he had known this other guy. He was a professor, and his name was Oko, and he was I guess he was a metaphysical. He said he wasn't a physicist. He was a metaphysicist. He was an IT specialist, and he was a friend. And said that the reason why UFO phenomena is not visible in this part of the world was because he felt that most of the population was a rural population, and really at that time did not have a lot of what would we say a lot of I guess ways of communicating like the internet. A lot of them didn't have the internet. A lot of them did not have uh, phones like we have with cameras on it. Of course, at that time, not many of us had it. That was quite a few years ago. So it just didn't have that ability to do, especially in the rural areas. Now, in the urban areas, of course, there was more ways to communicate, and some people even at that time did have internet. So, anyways, so as a result, virtually all UFO sightings remain unreported, with no means of these to get out to the rest of the world. So, um, also according to there's been these popular blogs that are called like Star Seeds, etc., where the firmed, they also have confirmed, and this is from some of my research, is that there has been this higher level of these UFO sightings. And here was another one that he told me about. Uh, so there's this guy in a location which was just north of Lagos, Nigeria, and him and his wife were coming home from his brother's house, which was located in the vicinity close to a place called Mile Two, which is kind of an area, like I said, just north of Lagos. Um, as they were walking, they looked in the sky, and he said, I usually do just as a hobby. I saw two objects in the sky moving around. They were disc-like shapes and silvery in appearance. And he noticed that they were darting around, but one was not moving at all. One was just stationary, and then one was moving. He recognizes that they were not aircraft. To his knowledge, these crafts were unlike any man-made machine, as they did not make any sound, at least any sound that they could hear. It was dark, so we eventually got home, but to his surprise, he had everybody else in the neighborhood is just buzzing with conversation about what they had also saw, the same thing, a UFO. And so at this point, one of the relatively stable, again, we're going back to the UFO, one of the UFOs were relatively stable, but the second one kept on darting around, uh, just going crazy. They said they had never seen anything like this before. So there was, and one of the interesting things, there was out in these rural areas, there was no, obviously, lights are minimal. So you have an extremely clear sky out there. So you get some really great shots or looks at the stars and UFOs at this particular point. Um, so they watched until 9 o'clock at night. Later, his brother, uh, brought out a book, and of course they looked through the book, and it showed illustrations of UFOs, and they confirmed that yes, that's what we saw, and they were reading to each other about the UFOs. So he was just beside himself that him and his family and many of his neighbors saw these UFOs, and they thought it was really cool. So I'm gonna also give you some more sightings, and these are older sightings, and the reason I like these sightings is because it eliminates one problem. As you all know, recent sightings here in the United States and around the world are now kind of confused with drones. Okay? I guarantee all these sightings I'm going to give you, there were no drones around. So these are pretty pure sightings. Okay? And some of them are quite famous, and they're from Africa. And so let me go through a few of these. I think some of them are very cool, and some of them are, as I said, quite famous. So, okay, so there was this one. There's one called the Aerial School, and that's a school that's in Zimbabwe, Ruwa, Zimbabwe, and this was in September 16th, 1994. While this, of course, was in Zimbabwe, it's not Nigeria, like I was talking about before. This is an extremely well documented, discussed UFO in Africa. So there was dozens of children reported seeing this silver craft land near their school. They claimed that it had seen beings emerge from it. So there was actually aliens that came out of it, and it was witnessed by not only children, but there was also, I think it was three teachers. Okay. And anyways, the incident gained like widespread attention due to the number of witnesses and the consistent accounts. Apparently, they went ahead and it was a full investigation of this. The government came out, they sat the kids down, they sat the teachers down, and they really, I guess they kind of interrogated them because this was such a amazing story because there was aliens involved too. So this is probably one of the most famous in Africa, by the way. If you haven't heard it, it's cool. The event was subject to much debate now. Of course, there was, I believe what happened probably, they saw that this possibly could be the real thing, okay? And I believe as quickly as possible, somebody else got involved with this to try to put this information out on this. I really feel this in this particular case. Um, so the event is often brought up when UFO sightings of Africa are discussed. So this was one of them. The kids saw the aliens, uh, and apparently the aliens were like gray aliens. I guess you would call it tall grays. And they were walking around. Some felt that they communicated with the kids. I mean, some of the kids said they felt like they were hearing something. They didn't hear voices, but it felt like it was uh, they were in their heads. The voices were in their heads. And so it was pretty extensive and pretty heavy encounter for to say the least. And then there's another one. This one goes way back. This was this was the Phantom monoplanes of South Africa, and this was in 1914. Okay, so and I guess these monoplanes were one wing. In 1914, most of the planes were biwings, and this was a mono wing, which would be just like we have one wing, basically one level of wings, not double, right? So that's a monoplane they call it. In the weeks leading up to South Africa's campaign during World War One, numerous South Africans reported seeing what they believed to be nighttime monoplanes. The sightings occurred from August to September 1914, involving observation of lights and, in some cases, the apparent outlines of aircraft performing advanced maneuvers. The mystery deepened because no known aircraft was capable of to have believed to be operating in this region at the time. So there was no accounts. Apparently, it was more further investigation, and I think this was the military got involved with this one because of the fact that they thought maybe somebody else was involved. But after the conversation, my understanding with the witnesses, and there was quite a few in this one also, they pretty much determined that they didn't know what it was. They didn't think it was militant. There was any kind of any planes from anybody, from either the good guys or the bad guys. So, anyways, and there's another one. This was later in the 1990s, and these sightings were in South Africa with a triangular craft. So there was multiple reports in the 1990s of triangular craft in South Africa. One specific example involved a family in a place called Bavarian Sport, Pretoria, which on April 7th, 1991, described seeing a hovering triangular craft with red central light and white lights at its corners. Okay? A similar craft had been reported in another little town called Eschenstein over the following nights. So it looks like it was kind of a continuation. Also in the 1990s, there was a town called Schlossberg. Residents reported lights looked like a water drop uh, and could change colors and shapes. And that would be the typical, what I always call the teardrop, and people have seen those all over the world. They're very strange. I've seen a lot of UFOs. I've never seen a teardrop one. Most of mine are the typical saucer shaped, and I've also seen a reptilian. I've also seen a triangular shape too. one large triangular shaped one when I lived in Arizona. So then there's another event. This was in 1972. It's called the Rose uh, Rosemead landing. So this is also a landing. So on the night of November 12th, 1972, residents of Rosemead, South Africa, in the Karoo region, reported seeing a bright light maneuvering in the sky. The light appeared to descend onto a local school's tennis court and then vanished. Subsequent examination of tennis court revealed scorch marks, holes in the tar, and damaged vegetation. So something definitely landed there. And in this case, there was significant. Um, there were several witnesses, and what was interesting about this one, there was actually physical traces left behind, which is doesn't happen always because of the simple fact most of them don't seem to land. Okay. Um, so even though the official investigation refuted it, again, I would say maybe a little disinformation. It was one of the ones that have been researched a lot and brought up many times from Africa. So bottom line here, Africa's had its share of the UFO phenomenon, including aliens, sightings of aliens, and possible encounters with people from Africa. So my belief is there is a lot of them there. They just haven't been reported. And I really believe there'll be many more in the future now that people have cameras and much more cell phone coverage. This will be something you'll see more coming out of Africa over the next years. So, hope you enjoyed the stories. Happy trails until we meet again. We'll see you. Bye bye.